Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Sanderlanche podcast. Today we are talking about Mistborn, the Well of Ascension, chapters 12 and 13. I am Joe, and with me as always is...
Ada?
Jack?
And Jaymee.
Yes, we're all here, and we're ready to talk about these two chapters wherein Sazed and Marsh find some pretty messed up stuff in the Conventical. Did I say that right? Conventical? And then we go back to Luthadel where some trouble's brewing, and Eland and the rest of the original thieving crew are arguing about the best way to handle the situation. So hold on to something. The Sanderlanche is about to begin.
Elders, tellers, keepers of the bottom, treasures of the dirt. Russian string, we scribble and we sing and dig for the annals of the earth. And we try to keep a little beauty in the world. All that died, we keep it in our hands.
Yeah, these were a couple of kind of meaty chapters with lots of information coming at us. So what did you guys think of 12 and 13, the beginning of part 2? Ghosts in the mist, not gorillas. They're not yet anyway. They haven't shown up.
These chapters were cool. I really liked the first chapter especially. It kind of, you get this almost suspenseful, creepy vibe from them going into the Conventical. Like, you don't know what's going to happen. We also got to see some new feruchemy powers that we haven't really witnessed before. So I really enjoyed the 12th chapter. The 13th chapter... It's cool that they're kind of making a plan, and Elend is obviously trying to be a little bit more on the ball and play his role as king. And it was kind of the first chapter where I'm actually rooting for him a little bit, because I feel like in the first book and even in the first part of the second book, I haven't like been behind Elend maybe as much as like the reader should be. So I would say this chapter kind of got me in his corner finally.
Yeah, calling him only half a man was not exactly in his corner. So okay.
Exactly.
Even though he makes everybody wait like 3 hours while he's digging out books.
Yeah, well, they said, oh, it's just like Kelsier.
Yeah.
Also, classic Elend. Getting distracted.
Oh, yeah.
Too many thick books around.
Yeah. They're all in his face, and he's just like, I don't know, I'm so distracted and confused. And then he gets back and he's like, has it really been 2 hours? It's already nighttime? Wow.
Sorry, random sidebar, but I don't know if anyone saw on the Instagram post that I put up this week with the books. Somebody commented like, "Man, Joe will love this picture with these thick books."
Yeah, I did like the picture on Instagram. So if you liked it, it's you'll see me. I gave it a heart.
Yeah, these chapters were good. I really liked seeing Marsh and Sazed going through the Conventical, all the horrors therein. And then it was interesting when Sazed makes his big discovery in the base, but we'll get to that. And yeah, it was fun seeing, we get a bit more with Orosur as well. We learn a bit more about how the Kandras work, which I found fascinating. I was like, oh yes, this is what I've wanted for a long time, pretty much since we knew that there were contracts and everything involved. So I really enjoyed that. And then yeah, the meeting was cool. Good to see the crew back together. And I'm just flicking through the pages trying to find it. But unless I miss my guess, at one point Elend's thick books go to war with Breeze's wine. So I'm just like, oh shit, this, because his books knock over Breeze's wine. I'm like, oh, that's dangerous there.
Poor Breeze. He just wants his wine and to sit and poke holes in other people's plans.
That's what he does.
Well, I'm in agreement with everyone. I like these chapters. There was a lot of meaty information coming to light. The first chapter that we read, the suspense going through that area, I was like, I'm so sure that this is going to be a trap, and I'm still not entirely certain it's not a trap. At some point. I don't know, it's just that suspenseful feeling that's like, oh my god, you're going to get caught, someone's going to be there, like maybe Marsh isn't setting the trap, but maybe someone has set the trap. I don't know, it doesn't feel right in there. I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed the interaction between Orosur and Vin as well, and this mist monster. Again, very suspenseful, very up my alley of reading. And yeah, in that meeting, I was like, it's really great to see them banter across each other, and then in the back of my head going, oh my god, but one of you might not be who you say you are. Ah. So yeah, I was loving these chapters.
I'd almost forgotten there's that whole tension behind that entire scene where it's like we don't know who might not be who they say they are.
Yep, so much mystery, but I'm also really pleased that there was a few things we were talking about last week that have been answered. So yeah, no, good read.
Okay. Yeah, I'm a fan of these two chapters, if only because like we finally get to kind of lengthy, very informative chapters after we've had several kind of shorter, quick chapters. There's been a couple longer ones, or at least one in the stuff that we've already covered, but not like these two in a row.
Yeah, this is the first one where we've done 2 chapters, and only 2 chapters for this book, isn't it?
Yep, and it's going to be the only one for a while where we do only 2 chapters. Just
wow.
FYI.
Yeah. I think one of the things I really liked about these two is that they were chock full of information, but it wasn't like you were just being delivered information for the sake of you having information. Mm-hmm. It was timed really well in the delivery of the story, and like I didn't feel like I was being force-fed this thing I might need later. It was delivered perfectly. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, in the whole first chapter where you guys were right on, we've got this creepy feeling the whole time. It's almost like all the stuff you're learning, you're like, I know this is important, but I'm more concerned with the creepiness and what might be about to jump out somewhere. Okay, so let's get into these. We got the first epigraph is apparently Alendi was working for Kwaan for years before he became convinced this guy was the hero of ages, also called Rabzine and the Anamneser. Or Savior. See, why can't you just say Savior? That's much easier to say than Anamneser.
I like it. I like Anamneser.
Okay. So we start with Sazed and Marsh, and they're arriving. A fortress sat in the misty murk of the evening in the bottom of a large... I like to think of it... He says it's a crater-like valley. I like to think of it as just like a big crater, like an asteroid impacted here, and they built a fortress at the bottom.
Yeah.
Yes, this area is called Tunguska.
And it's, I guess the crater is so deep that there's he talks about the defensibility of it, and he's like, it's kind of weird that they would give the high ground to anybody who came along, but nothing in the Final Empire, even Luthadel with its walls, they never felt was like made for an actual war, because who was going to attack the Lord Ruler? It's so deep, though, that there is an elevator that goes down, and they're kind of scouting it out from the edge of the cliff here. And he's like, I can't see anything moving around or any lights, but that doesn't mean there's no Inquisitors. And Marshall's like, nah, they're gone. I'm 100% sure. He doesn't know why he is so sure or how he's so sure, but he is sure, which not suspicious at all, right?
Yeah, something's really going on with that guy.
But when Sazed asked, where did they go then? Marsh says, north. And when Sazed is like, towards Luthadel? He's like, well, there are other things in the north also, but Luthadel is something that way. So where do we think that the Inquisitors have gone?
I don't know. For predicaments.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
I mean, my first thought when he said north was not Luthadel. It was actually Terrace. So I don't know. Maybe that's where they're headed.
We have repeatedly heard that Terrace is in the far north, and that might make sense.
Or maybe they're headed to the well. You know.
Well, there's got to be something significant about the well. I mean, their whole conventicle is built on top of, this Kwaan's metal journal. Yeah, that's got to have some sort of significance if that's so important to them too. That, Alendi wasn't the chosen one and the Lord Ruler stepped in and fixed it. For them, there's something pretty significant going on. So, yeah, I would think the Well of Ascension or Terrace is where they're going.
Plus, the book's called The Well of Ascension, so I feel like maybe we should go there at some point. Maybe not.
Maybe they just talk about it,
Yeah. They just talk ad nauseum about it. It's like those really crappy action movies where they just keep saying the title of the movie over and over. It's like, we've got to go to the Well of Ascension, the Well of Ascension.
It turns out the well isn't a place. It's just a concept that people talk about. There's no actual Well of Ascension. The well was inside you all along.
The well is in all of our hearts.
Are we getting high again? The well is inside of me. Yeah. Or, it's like, it's this park, and it's full of dinosaurs from the Jurassic period. It's some kind of park of Jurassic dinosaurs.
No, most of the dinosaurs were not from the Jurassic period.
You're right. They were from like the Triassic period?
Cretaceous Park doesn't sound as cool.
No, it definitely doesn't. Thanks, Michael Crichton.
So they find the elevator that's supposed to go down, but it has been broken.
Yeah, and this is where I started to really feel like the creep vibes. It's like they Sazed uses super sight to see, like, I don't see anybody. And then they get up there, and then like the elevator's broken the wrong way to where it's like somebody would have had to purposefully break it. So it's just it's weird.
Actually, I guess reading this, Marsh breaks it.
Yeah,
which
like,
I
didn't
remember.
Actually intact until they came along. It's like, we don't have anyone below to pull it. Shove.
Well, the way they described it, I thought, like, in order for somebody to leave the elevator that way, they would have had to have like broken it. But I guess I don't know.
Okay.
He says the cage is meant to be lowered by men holding it from below. I assume it has to be raised by men holding it from below too.
Exactly.
Right?
That's why I was confused, because it was at the top. So I guess
that just made me think that there was still someone down there.
Yeah. Or
Someone's
maybe
pulled it up and left it there.
Or maybe an Inquisitor just like, if there truly is nobody left there, maybe an Inquisitor pulled it up so that nobody else could come down, and then they just used their Mistborn powers to get out.
Yeah, well, I mean, and it might even be that if you turn on your computer, you can just pull the cage up by the rope from the top. And so after they all got up there, they like pulled it up. I don't know. But Marsh throws a lever and the cage falls, and so fast that the ropes are smoking, and then it smashes into the chasm floor. And Stace is like, great. If there's anyone down there, they're going to know we're here now. He doesn't say that, though. That would be confrontative. So he just thinks it.
Yeah, well, Marsh ain't scared, so.
And Marsh is like, follow however you wish, and begins to climb down the rope. He does not care about how Sazed is going to get down. He's like, he'll figure it out.
The thing that did strike me through this whole chapter is, for someone who insisted Sazed comes with him, Marsh really just doesn't give a crap that he's there. Like, later on in the chapter, he's like, yeah, look, you can't come with me for this bit.
Yeah. When he first shows up, the way he describes it is he wants Sazed to come because Sazed has powers that might help if the other Inquisitors show up and they need to fight. And so I guess unless there's a fight happening, he doesn't really care about Sazed being there.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, and we'll get to it, but I just like, what was Marsh's purpose there? Like, what did he want? He said they might have left something that he could use. So it's creepy vibes.
And Sazed, he hides his copper mines before he goes down.
Which, as soon as he did that, I started freaking out. I was like, they're going to get stolen.
Well, and honestly, I'm not 100% sure why he even does it, because no one else can access his copper mines, but him. We know that other ferrochemists can't access your metals that you filled with stuff.
Oh, it's because he didn't want the Inquisitors to destroy them in case there were any still down there.
Yeah, but then if he gets killed, it still doesn't matter because no one else can use them. But I guess if he just gets captured, and gets away later, maybe that's what he's thinking.
Yeah. I'm starting to get the sense that the chapters we've had so far, Say's identity is really tied into what he knows and what knowledge he can impart. And so I feel like when he's separated from his knowledge, he's really just an insecure guy who doesn't know what he's doing in the world. I think he's really just tied himself to his copper mines and and the knowledge that he's accumulated over the years. That is just who he is. And if he ever gets separated from that, he's not going to know what to do with himself. That'll probably break him.
That's a really good point. He has made that kind of the center of his entire world is these copper mines and all the stuff that's stored in them.
Yeah, because his previous chapters were about trying to impart some of that knowledge and being absolutely devastated, but keeping a lid on it when people just didn't care about what he had to say.
And I guess as long as there's another keeper around who still has their copper mines, he could get all or most of the information back, because he describes in this chapter how basically he had to sit there and listen to another keeper recite everything that was in their copper mines so that he could have that same storage.
He's the backup drive.
Yeah, kind of. Like they're each a backup for each other, which is kind of a cool way of doing it. It does sound almost computer-like, though, when you kind of say it like that.
Always back your files up, kids.
So, but the way that he elects to get down is he starts storing weight in, what is it, a steel metal mine? No, iron mine.
Iron.
Yeah. And so he starts filling that up with weight so that he weighs almost nothing and just kind of jumps off. And he falls very slowly, and the wind holds him up some because he weighs pretty much nothing. So this is a really cool scene, I thought. This is, like, I think Joe was mentioning, we get to see some powers of ferrochemy that maybe we'd heard about but hadn't actually seen in action. And actually, there's a bit in the annotations here that I was actually going to bring up in relation to this, if I can find where I put that. He says, here you finally get to see some real ferrochemical tricks. Sazed can do so much more than just make himself strong like he did in Book 1, or memorize things. If you think about it, there's an awful lot of things that could be done to intertwine allomancy with pushes and pulls, and ferrochemy, where a person can increase or decrease their weight. And so, yeah, imagining the different things you could do with that is kind of cool.
I don't know how many metals you can use for ferrochemy, do we?
No, we do not. That's a good point.
Yeah.
We hadn't really addressed that. It seems like everyone that we've used for allomancy seems to maybe have an equivalent for ferrochemy, but we don't know that for sure.
Yeah. It's just because, I mean, even though the numbers were wrong last book, we spent so long talking about, 9, 10, 11 metals, and then obviously there was more. I'm like, but that was specifically for allomancy. We don't actually know, like, and we know that ferrochemy, even the metals that are shared across both processes, don't involve the same attributes. Like, you can see the similarity between iron in allomancy and ferrochemy, but it's still very different effects. So who knows what the other metals even do, and however many more of them are, like there might be more. Yeah, I'm curious about how many more metals that and what they might be for ferrochemy.
I'm trying to think of if the version of the book I got you guys would have it, but in my version of this book, when you get to the end, there's a description of all the metals we know and what they do in allomancy and what they do in ferrochemy. And,
okay.
So you shouldn't look at that now because it might spoiler stuff that comes up later. But when we get to the end of the book, like, if that's in there, then there's some interesting fun facts.
I think there is, like, there definitely was in the back of the first book. I think there is one in the back of this book, but I haven't flipped to it yet in case I flip to the wrong page and see something I shouldn't.
Oh yeah, no, don't do that.
Yeah.
Okay, so he thinks, I guess here, more about ferrochemy and the different things it does.
Regardless of the scientific reasons, Sazed didn't fall as quickly.
Yeah, that's what it boils down to. If you don't care about the whole why it works the way that it works, because
shit just happens, man.
He gives the explanation that it doesn't change your size or anything. It changes the way the ground pulls against you, which I guess they don't have a word for. We know what that word would be, but
yeah,
but that actually opens some interesting doors when you think about it, because if what the metal is doing is affecting how gravity influences things, that could have some possibilities beyond just like making yourself lighter if you can manipulate it correctly. So yes, regardless of the scientific, as Dax said, the reasons, Sazed did not fall as quickly, and he gets to the bottom without much. He says there was so little shock that he barely even needed to bend his knees to absorb the impact. So useful is what we learn if you need to jump off a cliff.
I like how Marsh is just watching him go, and it's like, even with spikes through his face, Marsh is just like, what?
And there's a moment of paranoia about the mists, which is echoed a little bit later in Vin's chapter, but Sazed is like, these mists have been around all my life, but now I'm kind of uncomfortable. Like, are they going to kill me like they did old Jid?
Oh my god. It's perfect. It's perfect.
I accidentally read it as old Jedi and thought, oh god, we were talking about the high ground before as well.
The mist killed all the Jedi. It was very sad.
Yeah, they executed Order 66 on him.
Sazed has a moment where he's like, I'm not really jealous of allomancy. I mean, it's cool stuff, but not as cool as the stuff I can do. Ferrochemy, the metal mines of ferrochemy weren't as flamboyant, but they had a far more lasting value to society. Burn, allomancers. And he thinks that he says fear had never been a strong motivator in his life. He wasn't really afraid, but he was worried that there were so few keepers left. If he dies, then that'll be one less person available to teach the people. Not that he's doing that at the moment.
Not for lack of trying, mind you.
Yeah, he was totally doing that until Marsh showed up. And the place is completely dark. And when they start walking in, he's like, Marsh, I can't see in there. I'm going to need a lantern. Like, my tin can help me see better, but you have to have some light to start with. And I think this is the point when he says in the annotations, by the way, you probably remember from book 1 the way that the Inquisitors see. They have such a subtle touch with steel and iron and their lines that they can see via trace metals in the body, everyone's bodies and objects around them. But the interesting fun fact that he adds to that is, the thing is, any Allomancer with access to iron or steel could learn to do this. Some have figured it out in the past, but in current times, nobody, at least nobody that the heroes know, is aware of this. Except, of course, for Marsh, and he chose not to share.
Marsh isn't exactly a sharing kind of guy.
Especially not anymore. In this book, he is even less sherry, so far at least.
Great, now I have Sherry stuck in my head. Thanks for that.
And he starts, once he gets his lantern, starts looking around and recording in a tiny copper mind all the information about this place. Like, the Inquisitors obviously had a fondness for steel. That's not surprising, considering their religion was the steel ministry. Still, I feel like the walls being, like, hung with giant steel plates is kind of a little over the top.
I almost wondered if it was because we know that they are reliant on, I guess, the lines in metal to be able to see. I almost wondered if all the steel wall stuff was so that they could, like, see much better than in other places.
Let's say they got patterns and stuff put into them, so that would, like, that's just their arrows pointing, toilet this way or something.
Could be, yeah. It could be like total like street signs for them that Sage just can't recognize. That's an interesting point. Marsh says, "What are you doing?" And Sage is like, "Well, I gotta like record this. There's much to be learned from this place, I think." And Marsh is kind of offended that he's like, he'd be recording like the Inquisitors and their religion and stuff. He's like, "No, this stuff should be forgotten." And Stace is like, no. All religions, like, the knowledge of them is valuable. I don't know that I agree with that in relation to the Steel Ministry, honestly, but whatever. You do you,
I mean,
Stace.
not. I guess it's not something that you want to necessarily bring back, but I mean, for Sazed, he'd love to understand it, and that if someone, in 100 years' time was like, oh, well, what happened with this, at least they could tell them about it, not to resurrect it or anything, but it's more knowledge.
Yeah.
I could definitely see why Sazed wants to record it.
Yeah, from his perspective, 100%. Like, knowledge is what he's all about, so I get it. And I guess this is actually the first time that we're also learning, like, how he records things in the Coppermind. And that's also pretty interesting, I feel like, where he says them out loud and then sticks them in there, and then he kind of has forgotten. Like, he put the knowledge in the copper, so he doesn't have it anymore. He's like, I'm not even sure what I just said.
Which, that's just insane to think that, when he's removed certain copper mines, he does not remember those experiences. Like, not even his own experiences. It is literally his purpose is to record and store and pull these back out when someone needs them.
Yeah, I don't think I'd like that. Like, I don't want to not have access to my memories. Although it would be cool to have, like, Wikipedia with you at all times, basically, to access if you needed to.
But you're not remembering something. Like, this is his experience. He's walking through this area. And, I mean, in this case, dark and horrible and, well, maybe you don't want to remember it. But you're walking through this and going, wow, this is fascinating. Like, he's also uncovering this big part of history, which, we'll get to soon. But he won't remember that unless he's wearing that copper mind. It's like it's now not his memory. It belongs to the keepers. He's the only one who can pull it out, but he will wear this, recite it to someone else, and they will share the same experience that he shared because he's communicated it that way, because he won't remember the original experience.
Yeah, it's a little unnerving to realize, like, how much stuff you've forgotten because you stored it somewhere, basically. But he's cool with it. It's what he does. And then we get the line, Marsh had found the servants.
It's horrifying.
Yeah. So it's just a whole lot of dead people piled up, their bodies piled up near the back of this room. He says the servants had huddled up against the back wall as they died. It's just, yeah. So the Inquisitors, I guess, aren't planning on coming back if they killed all their servants. Or maybe, I don't know. I don't know what the point of killing all the servants was in the first place, so I guess it's hard to make a guess based on that.
I would presume, like, these servants are probably just prisoners they've kept there to tend to their needs, and they've decided they don't need the place anymore, So they don't need the people who tend to it. They don't want them getting out and spreading their secrets across the world. The Inquisitors are a very secretive bunch, so they've probably just gone, right, you guys have no further purpose, let's just kill you all. Form an orderly line.
Yeah, I think that's probably the argument that makes the most sense, is that they've decided they don't need this place anymore, and you're obviously not going to let anybody walk out of here with Inquisitor secrets, so...
Yeah.
Marsh remained in the doorway and says, "There's a bad air about this place." You don't say, man. I gave it away.
You have only just noticed that?
We should not spend much time here. And this is where he tells him not to follow him. He's like, "I'm going to go up to the Inquisitor's quarters. You do whatever you want, but don't follow me." And he doesn't explain it real well. He's like, "I don't care if you witness Inquisitor atrocities. I just do not wish to be with you when you do."
Which, okay, so what's going to be worse than the pile of dead people they just found?
This is a fair question. And maybe he's just like, "Oh, I wish I hadn't had to experience that with Sazed." And that may be what prompted this in the first place. But
possibly, yeah.
Yeah, if there's something worse than a giant pile of bodies that were clearly slaughtered as they like cringed away and tried to hide in the corner, then Sazed probably doesn't want to experience it either. So Marsh goes upstairs, and Sazed was alone. Good sentence.
And this is where we all started screaming, "Trap, trap, trap."
When he walks away. Yeah.
Yep.
You're like, you gave me a half-assed excuse for why I can't go with you, and now you're leaving.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's going to be dark and dangerous. At least he's got a lantern.
Yeah, but like, you think about it, he's putting his thoughts into his copper mind. Like, and those are his memories of this place as well. What happens if he forgets the way out?
It didn't seem like particularly twisty and turny from what we've read so far, so it probably wouldn't be super difficult. But yeah, it's a possibility, especially if he goes off the beaten track, which he starts to do right here.
Yeah.
He finds a dark stairwell, which he decides to descend, because obviously you got to be careful. Don't want to get eaten by a grue.
By the bad guy from Despicable Me?
No, that's not. Although you're right, that is the same name. No, there's an old game.
Vector?
Zork.
Oh, well, yeah, I vaguely remember that.
A common catchphrase associated with the game Zork is, "It's pitch black. You are likely to be eaten by a grue." So I think I get that reference from Ready Player One, because I've never actually played the game. But still. Anyway. Yeah. Weird tangent. As I walk, I wonder what secrets the Inquisitors deemed worthy of hiding below the earth in the basement of their stronghold. It's very poetic of you, Sazed, as you stick all this stuff into your copper mind. But he keeps finding like big chambers with not much furniture, no libraries, no lounges, several containing large metal blocks that could be altars. In the last room, at the back, he finds what he thinks is maybe a torture chamber. Metal tables set in the floor, covered in blood, but no corpses. Blood flakes and powders at my feet. A lot of men have died in this room, I think. There don't appear to be any torture implements beyond spikes. Massive, heavy spikes like in an Inquisitor's eyes. Some tipped with blood. I don't think I'll handle those. Well, yeah, there you go. Probably smart.
Good plan.
You up to date with your tetanus shot?
Yeah, he says that they're just like the ones in Marsh's eyes, but some are of different metals. So maybe, all of them might not be rusty. I don't know if, pewter tarnishes, but might not rust, right? So I don't, I actually don't know what metals can rust. I'm making things up. But. And he thinks that maybe this is a place to make new Inquisitors, and is suddenly very worried that after they spent months sequestered here, they might have made some more. Might have made a lot more. Which, yeah, that should be a concern. That's not what you want.
Nope.
But then on the other hand, he's like, well, but these guys are always like very secret and exclusive. Could they really have found that many people they felt worthy of joining their groups?
Well, I mean, they were secretive and exclusive when the Lord Ruler was in charge. Now that he's not anymore, all bets might be off.
Yeah. I guess it really depends on what their goal is. I mean, somebody was theorizing that they might have a goal to create a new Lord Ruler in Sazed, which doesn't seem to have panned out for this chapter, but we don't know what their goal is. So if whatever their goal was could be accomplished by making more Inquisitors, maybe they would do that. And he talks about how he suspected that you have to be an Allomancer to be changed into an Inquisitor. Marsh was a Seeker. He looks at all the blood and the spikes and the tables and decides that he's not certain that he wants to know how you make an Inquisitor.
That's where he draws the line at knowledge.
I don't blame him necessarily, although I feel like it would be useful information
not even
to
a
have.
little.
And that's when he finds an even like further back, kind of not really secret necessarily room, but like a different kind of room from these other rooms. At the bottom of the stairwell, there's a chamber, and there's a giant steel plate 5 feet across, almost 5 feet tall, with writing in Terrace on it. And when he starts to translate it, it probably became obvious to everyone pretty fast that this is what we have been reading. It did not take us long to come across it this time around. I write these words in steel, so on and so forth. And basically, I think we get like the first few epigraphs and maybe a little bit of extra information in here. No, I don't know if there's anything extra. This may just actually be the first few epigraphs. So I don't know. Probably no one was particularly surprised. I think we had a theory that he was going to find this thing here. Was anybody surprised that it was actually in a giant sheet of metal? Because we talked about that, but...
No. I mean,
No.
pretty much when Dak and I said, like, a Skyrim Dragon Wall, I was like, that's what it's going to be. It's going to be exactly like that.
I'd forgotten
Yep.
that you guys talked about that before. Of course, I never played Skyrim, so...
Boo! Play Skyrim, you're the
Aw.
worst. Boo!
And then Mark shows
Pretty
up
awesome.
and scares the crap out of him. And decides that this trip was a waste. They took everything of value with them when they left. And says he's like, no, this is useful for me. Probably not for Marsh. Marsh probably doesn't care. But he can't take a visual memory of it, he says, because it's hard to like get a picture of that much text and actually keep it all in there in your brain or in the metal mind after it goes through your brain, I guess. But and Marsh does not want to wait around long enough for him to translate or read off the whole thing to store. So Say's fortunately brought some paper with him, and he's gonna and some I guess charcoal pencils or something. He's gonna take a rubbing so that he has the exact text.
Good planning.
Yeah. So maybe the trip was worthwhile for Say's after all. He found something written by an ancient Terrace philosopher, holy man, which they've been searching desperately for their religion for 10 centuries or whatever. So he might have just found something very useful. One wonders why the Inquisitors have it, but maybe we'll find out when we get the whole thing translated. Maybe the like second half is here's how you make an Inquisitor.
Get 10 humans, slice them up into tiny bits on spikes, mix well.
Serve warm.
Add 500 grams of butter.
Well, yeah, you always need plenty of butter. He now has a very good excuse for why he needs to go back to Luthadel so that he can get this super important information back to the Terrace people. And he's so happy about it that he feels guilty about the fact that he's so happy about it. Such a conflicted guy. It's like he's always said that this is the stuff that he wants to do. He wants to be out there teaching the people once the Lord Ruler falls. And now that he's out there doing it, he kind of wants to be somewhere else doing something else. And he doesn't feel great about it.
He wants to be teaching people something important and significant, even though like what he is teaching people is important because they need to know how to live. He wants to teach people this sort of stuff, and now he's got a unique opportunity to teach this and translate this and himself be significant. So
You have to
it's
wonder.
more exciting that way.
Yeah, he's a terraceman who needs excitement, I guess. Apparently, we found out in previous chapters that the other terracemen were like, don't get involved in stuff. Don't, they didn't like the fact that he was helping in the revolution against Lord Ruler or whatever. Even though it eventually succeeded, he's still kind of looked down on as the wild man of the group who puts himself in too much danger. And now he may have found the thing that they've been looking for 1,000 years. And so you have to wonder if they're still going to be like, but you were supposed to be out there teaching people irrigation and stuff. Why can't you just do what we tell you to do? Jeez. Or maybe they'll finally be grateful and make him the new leader of the Terrace people because he's awesome. Probably not.
Do the Terracemen have a leader that we know of?
That's a fair point. I imagine after the Lord Ruler died that they would have done something to govern themselves, but we don't actually know.
Yeah, what did say in a previous chapter that the other Terrace members didn't agree with them? I think maybe he mentioned some kind of council. I don't know.
Yeah, he mentions, and let me jump back to it. that the synod had decided that he should be out there teaching the things to the farming and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
To the SCA. Farming, sanitation,
So
government,
they
medicine.
got some kind of council authority system.
Mm.
And that's the end of the creepy chapter.
Didn't end as badly as we all expected.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, it makes you wonder if we're going to come back and then things are going to go badly here after all that buildup that didn't pay off with anything terrible happening. Or if we'll just come back and he'll like show up at the gate in Luthadel and be like, hey guys, what's up?
I brought paper.
I brought paper and beer.
Yes, do any of these copper mines contain brewing?
I bet they do. I would bet money
Nice.
that there's information on brewing in there. And our next epigraph is Kwaan realizes and connects the signs of the anticipation to Alendi and is so excited and announces his discovery to the other world bringers, as that may be a new word for us, I think, and was met with scorn. Oh, how I wish I had listened to them.
I really want to know what Alendi did to make Kwaan turn on him so much.
Yep. Maybe we will find out from this document, since it seems to be very much focused on his history with Alendi.
Yeah, but it turns out Kwaan is just as good at waffling as Alendi was in his journal.
Just as good at saving important secrets for dramatic moments, you mean?
Sure, we'll go with that.
So we start out with Vin and Orsor, and they're just hanging out, and Vin is like, does it seem like the mists are coming earlier? And Orsor's like, what are you talking about? And she tries to explain, and he's like, they're mists. What do you care? Like, they do what they do. And she's like, doesn't it even seem a little bit strange to you? And he's like, well, I'll think that it's strange if you wish me to, mistress.
Ugh, this is why he's frustrating. He's like, tell me whatever you want me to be, I'll be it. If you say it's weird, you want me to say it's weird, okay? I don't care.
Sorry, I'm looking up something because it reminds me of a line from a movie that I'm trying to remember.
I just sort of think of that episode of King of the Hill with the Buddhists, and like Hank is Hank is threatening one of them because of what he's told Bobby. He's like, I ought to kick your ass, and the monk is just like, if my ass is to be kicked, then it is to be kicked. For some reason that made me think like that's what Orosor would say in that situation. It's like, all right, well, commence.
Oh, it's that line. It's in The Name of the Wind. That's what I'm thinking of. When Kvoth is telling the story, and he's like, I'm waiting a second to see if you guys are going to be like, no, there's no such thing as dragons.
Oh.
And Bast is like, I didn't make any promises. I can say it if you want me to. And he gets very grumpy about it. He's like, have you guys ever heard the term white mutiny? And then Chronicler like gets his little grin. He's like, yep, I sure have.
You dang smartasses.
Okay, sorry. I just when I get that thought, I have to go ahead and figure out what the heck I'm thinking about. So Orsor is overly, I don't want to say helpful because it's not really helpful.
It's like, what's the opposite of that?
Yeah,
Obstructive. Yeah.
Well, he's not. He's like just so obedient that it's infuriating. So, and Vin's like, man, I wish Sazed were back. Sazed is a much better like person to hang out with than this guy.
Sazed was great. He didn't argue. He wasn't hostile. He didn't eat people.
As far as she knows, yeah.
Also, I'm pretty sure he doesn't have fleas.
Probably not. Although he has been in like that out of the way village for a long time, so they,
Yeah, true.
But he probably knows how to get rid of them too. He has those copper mines, so. And so she's like, we need to focus on finding the imposter. So that means I need to know more about you. He's like, me? And she's like, well, no, Khandra. We need to understand his motivations. And Orsor's like, well, his motivation is that he's going to follow his contract, which is not helpful. But we do find out that Khandra always have a contract. Without one, they are not allowed to enter human society. And she's like, well, what if it's like a rogue Khandra? And Orsor's like, no, such a thing does not exist. He's very certain. That's always suspicious to me when someone is that certain about something. But
well, it's like with the last book. It's like, no, you can't pierce copper clouds or push metals inside someone's body.
Yep.
Okay.
And Vin brings up the thing that we talked about last time, where she's like, well, he couldn't have killed a human himself because Khandra can't kill humans, right? And Orsor confirms for the first time for us that yes, they are all bound by that same rule that they cannot kill a human.
That actually threw me for a bit because the way he made it sound earlier was like that was part of his specific contract, and now it's like, no, that's everyone's. Like, oh, really? Oh.
It's always contract with a capital C, so it may be a standard form or something that they're filling out. So someone had to sneak into the palace and murder someone, and then the Condor would have taken their body. And so she, like us last time, she's like, we can eliminate Breeze. He was outside the city when it happened. And we can eliminate Elend, because he was on the wall when it happened, with Vin. And so she's trying to pry for more information to figure out what can we use to figure out who this is. They replicate blood, flesh, skin, and muscle, so they will bleed.
Like you have seen that when I split my skin. I'm like, and I just picture Vin just going, yeah, thank you. I didn't want to picture that.
Yeah, I totally jumped over that for that exact reason. I was like, we don't want to revisit that.
Sorry.
And she asks if most Khandra are as good at imitation as Orsor, and he's like, I'm about average. Some are better, some are worse, but we're all very good, apparently. She asked if there's some way to use Allomancy to spot a Khandra, and he doesn't want to talk about it. And she's like, tell me anyway, and he's like, are you giving me a command? And she says she doesn't want to command him about anything, and he's like, oh, so I can leave then?
Dangerous territory there.
Yeah, we're stepping on some landmines here. She's like, that's not what I meant. He's like, it would be easier for me if you would try to say what you mean, mistress.
It's like he wants to get out, and like, this is what I feared, like from the start of the book. Like he's going to get out and cause some serious problems at some point.
Yep, you have been worried about that exact thing happening, and he clearly would not be upset about that.
Nope.
But it seems like one of the things that he's annoyed about is he's like, usually I'm fulfilling a specific role. I'm given somebody's bones and I adopt their personality. But you have given me no direction, just the bones of this animal. And so the Khandra are all about playing a role, and he has not been given a role that he can play. And it is bugging him, I think. Which might explain some of his hostility.
He says that it's like it's not who a Khandra is, it's who they become. So like their identity is tied directly to who they're impersonating. So he's probably just pissed that he has to be himself. Like it's a weird kind of identity formed on self-loathing and becoming something better than yourself, which is an interesting sort of philosophy.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it that way.
Yeah, it's almost like they hate what they are, so their entire purpose of in life is to appear to the world at large to be something better than what they are.
Yeah. I always just thought about it as they're actors, and when they're out of work actors, they're very grumpy about it.
No, I mean, the two aren't mutually exclusive.
That's true. You can also be an actor who hates yourself.
I feel like a lot of them do.
Oh, so sad.
Not really.
But he eventually admits that Khandra cannot be affected by emotional allomancy, or mental allomancy. So you can try to riot or soothe their emotions, but it will have no effect. They won't even notice. Which, she says that's not very useful. I feel like it could be. Because if you were just super overt with it, anyone would notice that their emotions were being manipulated. Like if you just crush all their emotions down so they're not feeling anything at all, they'll be like, hey, what's going on? Why are you doing that? So I feel like it would be an easy test, but maybe that's me.
It depends on who you were using it on too, though.
That's a good point. Like we know that Marsh from the previous book, he was actually pretty good at detecting when somebody was messing with his emotions because he sensed Vin doing it really subtly a couple of times. But other people are probably like, we wouldn't notice unless you were just super, super obvious. But we also got another question answered from last time, which I felt like was a really important question when Jaymee asked it, was can the Khandra use allomancy if they eat an allomancer?
Yes, I was really excited when this question came up. I was like, oh, yes. Thank you for thinking on the same lines as me.
And the answer is no. They cannot use allomancy. And since most of the crew is allomancers, then that is probably helpful.
Yeah. So if Vin beats Ham's ass in a fight, then we know, uh-oh.
And she's really kind of looking at subtle ways to go about it, like how she can detect something without anyone noticing. I don't think I would be that subtle if it was me. I would have a bunch of guards and be like, Ham, come in here. Okay, burn some pewter right now. I'm going to be like using bronze or whatever. Is it bronze? Brass? Whichever one. I think it's bronze.
Bronze.
It's like, I'm going to use it to detect if you're doing something. Okay, you're good. Because you can tell them at that point, be like, someone has been replaced. We're going to figure out who. I'm testing you right now. So it would be easy to eliminate like Cam and Spook and maybe even Clubs that way if she was willing to be overt about it. But I don't know that she will.
If it's not them two, though, it could tip off whoever it is.
Well, yeah, if you let word get out. But, I mean, if you keep it small to only the people that you trust to not have been replaced, then, of course, there's not many of those right now. We have Breeze and Ellen and Vin that we can trust right now. So that's not much of a crew to fight down. Of course, a Conjure also can't kill a person. So even if you tip them off, like, the worst they could do is maybe run away. I don't know.
True.
I mean, the flip side is one of the people they have that they know is safe is Breeze, and they make the point that, you know, you can write or soothe our emotions, but it won't have any effect. So it seems like they've got someone they can trust who can do something that can provide a bit of an answer at least. So they could set something up with Breeze in the background.
That would definitely be a smart way to go about it. He's so experienced with that he was probably the one who would notice if somebody was being affected or not by what he was doing.
Yeah.
Orsor points out that if it was easy to detect Conjure, then they wouldn't be worth much as imposters, would they?
It's a valid point.
Yeah. And she asked the question, she's like, hey, before everyone was like, oh, we have to keep the Conjure away from the Steel Inquisitors. Why is that? And he will not say that. He's like, no, we're not required to reveal secrets about Conjure nature, mistress. And she's like, right. In the contract, I really need to read that thing again. So she has read it.
Not
Honestly,
very well, apparently.
Yeah, she doesn't remember a lot.
She doesn't like reading.
Yeah, you're right. That would explain it. I was starting to suspect at this point in the book that the contract was like a metaphor or something. Like there wasn't an actual contract that you read. It was just like
I was thinking the same
philosophical thing. And then she's like, "Oh right, I need to read that thing again."
Yeah,
just
the thing that's put down in writing, right? It's like, Ellen, can you go over this contract for me and just give me the details?
He loves reading, so that would totally work.
Yeah.
They're a team. See, they got to help each other out. And Orsor's like, hey, shouldn't you be at that meeting the king is having? And she's like, nah, maybe later. And she thinks about the Lord Ruler a little bit, just reflecting on all the stuff that happened with the Lord Ruler and how maybe it will have meaning for what's yet to come. And so to distract herself, she's like, hey, Conjure, what kind of things do you like? What do you love and what do you hate? And he's like, I don't want to answer. Which... I think this is, now that we've talked about it and like the way Dak kind of framed it, I feel like this is just another symptom of him like, I don't want to have to be myself. Maybe even I don't want to have to be myself openly. Like maybe that's the thing that he's always gotten to keep. Like his masters don't touch that. Like his personal nature and the things that he likes and dislikes, because he's always playing someone and he has that person's likes and dislikes. So maybe this is like his real personality is the thing that he's always gotten to keep private and is only for other Conjure or something. And now he's having to kind of come out with it. But she's like, okay, fine. If you don't want to talk about it, I won't force you. Because she starts to realize that the way that he's resenting her is kind of how she resented the other crew leaders and people who had power over her and were assholes about it. She's like, okay, I don't want to be that guy, I guess.
Oh God, when did I turn into Cameron?
Right? That's not a realization you want to have.
No.
It's a good thing for Vin, like she's starting to sort of see and realize her behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Like I still think that there's a chance that these two will be okay. Like it's obviously taken them a long time to get to this point, but she's kind of like, like he's kind of useful and I don't want to be a dickhead about it. You know, I'll respect that there's some things you don't want to answer and I won't force you to do it. So I thought that was some good growth for her.
So maybe this is indicative of a positive turn in their relationship.
Yeah, she's got to give also what he needs, I think. So we'll see what happens.
Well, and then we get to, she starts to feel something in the mist, and she's like, you know what I hate, Contra? Being afraid. And she jumps out into the night to take on the thing that she's feeling with her bronze. And I like the line, ghosts don't spy on people, do they? Interesting question. And she kind of talks about, or thinks about, kind of similar to where we were thinking, where she's like, the only thing in Ska mythology that comes close to these creatures is mist wraiths. And that was kind of where some of our early theorizing about the mist spirit was coming from also, because that's the only thing we know of in this world. It's all like this creepy, weird mist thing. But she's like, those aren't like this ghost thing. Not that she knows of, anyway. And she tries talking to it. She's like, why have you been watching me? And it just kind of sits there. And then it disappears, and something grabs her arm. Something cold, something terrible, but something very real. And with a groan, she falls backwards out of the window. And manages to flare a pewter just before she hits the ground so she doesn't break. And then Orser's like, Mistress, what's going on? Shall I go for aid? See, he's being very helpful, Wolfhound. And now, suddenly, she's feeling a different way about the mists. That they're ominous and obscuring. And she's like, tries to fight it back, saying, no, the mists are my freedom. The night is my home. I haven't needed to be afraid of the night since Kelsier taught me otherwise. And she does not want to lose that.
Well, no one wants to go back to feeling powerless after they haven't felt that way for so long. I got a serious Jaws vibe from this. It's like looking at the mist. It's like sort of looking at the water and knowing there's a shark in there somewhere, but you don't know where.
Yeah, I totally see that.
Normally, I like to go swimming at the beach. Not anymore.
And yet, we know the thing can stab people, and it seems probably it grabbed her arm and scared her, but and gave her this cold feeling. She says something cold and something terrible, but we still don't know for sure that it's super dangerous. I mean, it didn't stab her.
Yeah, we don't know if it tried to or not.
That's true.
It didn't speak, did it?
No, it didn't even move, I don't think, except to disappear. Oh, no, I'm sorry, it did move. It says it stepped forward and then it disappeared. So yeah, it's weird. It's a weird thing. It's still very mysterious. And we move on from that to Elend, bringing his third pile of books to stack onto the table. He doesn't need these books. I mean, he references a couple of them in their discussion, but he's like memorized the relevant parts of them anyway, it seems like. So, yeah, he's been gone for 2 hours, left them sitting, waiting there. And when they call him on it, he's like, well, there were books involved.
No, mate, you're still rude.
Right? Of course, when you're the king, you can make people wait for you. Although Breeze is like, if the fate of Central Dominance weren't at stake, and if it weren't so fantastically enjoyable to watch Hammond lose an entire month's earnings to the boy, I'd have left an hour ago. Breeze doesn't care if you are the king. He's not waiting around for that.
Shocking.
Well, and apparently we learned in the rest of the chapter that they kind of had a discussion already while Elend was gone. Because he left them alone for 2 hours, so what the hell else are they going to do?
Yeah, fair enough.
But Brandon says in the annotations for this section that the Elend scene is almost a direct parallel of the scene in Book 1 where Kelsier introduces his plan to his people. Elend has a much harder time of it. In fact, the scene, in conjunction with the scene in the Assembly, is supposed to establish Elend as what he is, a man with great ideas but poor leadership techniques. Brilliant and scholarly, but he doesn't know how to get people to do what he wants. This is reflected in his speech patterns, and has been since Book 1. He likes to use the phrase, now see, followed by an observation. He doesn't command, and when he argues, he uses very passive sentences. All of this hopefully makes your subconscious see him in a certain way. That's not written well. Sorry, Brandon. The only reason he convinces the crew to go along with them is that, one, he's right, they like to gamble, and this is their type of plan, and two, they know him enough that his ideas have earned a measure of trust from them. When necessary, Elend can give a brilliant speech. He can make people dream and hope. He just isn't good at arguing and is rather poor at being a dictator. Which I think that comes across. All of that stuff.
Yeah.
I would think so.
And the crew reminiscence about Kelsier's handwriting and how bad it was. And Elend is still self-conscious about not being Kelsier. He's like, geez, even this guy's handwriting is legendary.
Like, he's very reverent of a guy that he only met once in the middle of a battle.
Yeah, but people that he knows and cared about Kelsier a great deal and respected him a great deal. And this guy is the reason that he's king right now.
Oh yeah, and like all the people Elend hangs out with right now are Kelsier's friends. We haven't seen any of Elend's mates from the first book show up. So
no.
That is interesting. I wonder if they all left the city, like with their families, or maybe some of them died. Because you think those would be the kind of guys that Elend would want, like as part of his new government, if they were involved in his early plans and stuff.
Yeah.
But while he's been gone, the crew has basically gotten together and figured out that they think that they need to side with Set and try to persuade him to leave Elend as provisional leader in Luthadel, not Luther, in Leadadel. That would be weird.
Renaming the city. Let's go.
He doesn't like the central dominance. He finds it barren and flat.
I mean, it's not really wrong.
Yeah, we haven't seen Set's dominance much, so maybe it's nicer. And they point out that it's like, yeah, you wouldn't be king, but we would all get to live, and Luthadel wouldn't be pillaged, which, that's a fair point. Pillaging, bad. And Dockson's like, well, hey, but what about, maybe Straff? Him and Elend are family. He might give us a better deal. And Elend's like, yeah, he'd make a great deal, and then break it and stab you in the back the moment it was convenient, so...
That just seems like a very... I don't know, this seemed a bit... Dockson, you know enough about the nobility to know better than that. Like, you know about Straff Venture at this point.
Yeah, well, it may just be that he doesn't know much about Set, so he's like, well, maybe this would be better.
Yeah, maybe.
And Breeze is like, oh, also, Set hates me, so you might have to pretend that I'd been executed or something? I don't know. And, but Elend's big question is, how does Set treat the Ska in his lands? And Breeze is like, not well. And that's what Elend does not want to give up, is the fact that they've got, this society where people are equal, and the Ska aren't slaves anymore. And he's like, I don't want to live at the cost of the entire Ska population of this dominance. That's not right. So Elend has sort of his own ideas based loosely on these books that he's brought in about like shipping grain and things, about how they might work some stuff. He's like, hey, all these people, basically no one but the Lord Ruler has ever had to deal with moving armies around the Final Empire. So he's like, maybe they're not really prepared for it. All, the supply lines, all the other stuff that comes with having a giant army that you're running around the place, 50,000 guys, they need to eat a lot of food. And Breeze points out that Set has one of the Lord Ruler's main canneries under his control, so he can ship all of this canned food down the canal relatively easily. That's kind of advanced technology for the Final Empire. The Final Empire has always been a weird kind of mix. In the very first like prologue, we had guys with like pocket watches, and now we have a cannery. But at the same time, they're like sword guys and stuff.
I'd honestly forgotten the pocket watch.
Yeah, I think it's only mentioned like maybe one time, maybe a couple times in the Final Empire, that there is such a thing. But Elend, and they go back and forth a lot. I won't go through all the details because I've talked enough this episode. But he basically wants to pursue a plan where they're trying to turn the other two against each other as much as possible, and they're pretending to be allied with each of them at just the right time so that they can eventually maybe come out on top, while doing subtle things like attacking supply lines and stuff like that to make it harder for these guys to stay. And everyone's pointing out all the problems with this plan. Like, we don't have enough food already. We're going to be under siege. There's going to be all of these horrible things will be happening. But really, the crew's main idea, or main issue with his idea, because they're like, yeah, we talked about this kind of plan also while you were gone, but the big problem is that it relies on you, Elend, to be like the center of the thing. You're going to have to be the one scamming these rulers when you meet with them and tricking them into thinking that you're really on their side and whatnot. And they're not sure that he's ready for that, which is completely fair. Yeah.
Yeah, he's going to have to put his big boy pants on and do something he's never done before. Stand up to his father.
He's always stood up to his father in like petulant and annoying ways, but...
Yeah, but now he's got to do it like a man.
Petulant and annoying doth not a king make.
No, probably not.
Yeah, just look at Joffrey.
Yeah, actually, that's...
Didn't work out so
good. Man. Well, I was going to say, he was in power for quite a while. That was because he had his very smart granddad backing him up.
Yeah, and his conniving mum / aunt.
Hell, even the uncle who hated him did a lot to keep him in power.
Elend's not quite as bad as Joffrey, thankfully. But
yeah,
that's a considerable bar to meet.
Yeah, no, it's not that big.
As bad as Joffrey. Wow.
None of the inbred insanity in Elend.
as far as we know.
I mean, I would take Strathventure over Joffrey.
Yeah, that's. Of course, we don't know Straff that well yet either. I mean, we've met him a couple times, but by the end of this book, you may not feel the same way. We'll have to see.
Yeah, well,
But I do like when they finally get it out there that Breeze basically comes out and says, he's like, look, no offense, but you're new to this, and it's difficult to agree to a daring plan that puts a newcomer as the linchpin member of the team. And Ellen's like, no, guys, come on, I can do it. And Clubs is the first one to be like, hey, if the kid wants to try, we'll let him try. He's king or something, right? We'll just let him have his way.
Did you guys hear his speech?
It was fantastic.
And eventually everyone kind of comes around, and they're like, okay, if you really want to do this risky, dangerous plan, let's do the risky, dangerous plan. And as I read in Brandon's annotations, it's like a large part of the reason is that they are guys who like to gamble. This is the kind of plan that appeals to them, just like when Kelsier presented his crazy plan to overthrow the Final Empire. And so Dockson's like, okay, let's give us some time to come up with some ideas, and we'll meet again in a few days, and we'll go into more detail about what we need to do here. And that's when there's a knock at the door, and Captain Jaymee is there, and they have caught someone spying on their meeting. And it is our mystery terrace woman from last time. So probably not the Kandra, the bones that we found earlier.
Nope. Not gonna lie, because I've been playing a lot of Breath of the Wild lately. For some reason, when they brought her in here, I just started picturing Urbosa.
Yeah. The
see that.
terrace in general give me a very give me a vibe of that, like the same vibe as their people.
Yeah.
Sorry, now I'm just bringing up a picture to remind myself because it's been a while since I played that game. But I remember she's the Gerudo champion, right?
That's the one.
Yeah.
I like her flashbacks in that game, actually. They're pretty fun.
Yeah.
And so this lady was trying to listen on the other side of a stone wall to try to hear their conversation. And Dame was like, I don't really think that she probably could have heard anything. And the terrace woman's like, I would speak with the king alone. The rest of you are excused. Which, wow, that's some balls.
Yeah, and she doesn't even have any. And neither do any of her male friends.
Oh, wow.
You don't know who her friends are.
Well, she obviously knows Sazed, although they may not be friends.
Yeah. Oh, no. She says she knows Sazed. I guess that depends on how much you trust her statements. And they're like, yeah, like, we're going to leave you alone with the king. And she's like, no, it's fine. You know, I'm sure that the young Mistborn hiding outside the window can deal with me if something gets out of hand. And that's what tips Elend off to be like, hey, you're a keeper. That's the only way that you could have known something like that, or been trying to overhear us on the other side of a stone wall. And she's like, yep, sure am. And she says Sazed did not send her, but it was because of him that she is here. And Sazed did say that he sent help, so this jives with that. But it could be a misdirect also.
Mm.
And she's like, hey, you guys can leave me bound if you want while I talk to the king. It's fine. And Ellen's like, like that would do anything if you're really a pharochemist. But whatever.
Yeah, she'll Hulk out.
And they actually do it. They leave. Ellen tells them, go ahead, you guys can leave, and I'll talk to her. And he says, we'll be waiting just outside, Elle, and then closes the door. And that's the end of the chapter, which I've always felt was kind of ominous.
Mm.
But yeah, so we've met our mystery terrace woman, although we still don't really know anything about her at this point, other than she says that she knows Sazed and that she's a keeper.
She's very full of purpose and like not in a pleasant way.
Well, and even from the couple of sentences that she speaks, you definitely get the impression that she's not as
She's kind of like, fuck all y'all, I'm here to do a job.
Yeah, she's got some confidence that Sazed maybe lacks, where he says, that's not a good idea, I think. She's like, I would speak to the king alone, the rest of you are excused. As she's been brought in as a prisoner with her arms tied.
Yeah.
So she's a gutsy lady, at the very least. Whatever else she might be at this point. So, okay. Final thoughts on these two chapters before we move into predicaments?
Nope.
What predictions do you guys have? I'm gonna say let's start with Dak. Dak, what do you got?
Well, I got nothing for our mystery terrace woman at this stage. My prediction that I've got at this stage involves the Inquisitors. just from everything they've got going on, their stronghold is abandoned. Marsh doesn't have the information he went looking for. I suspect the Inquisitors as a whole are on the move. I think some of them probably going to attack Luthadel, because I suspect that they're going to be a conflict killer. They're going to show up, and all of a sudden the other army's just like, fuck, we didn't count on this, because the Inquisitors, I think, are going to want to take things back after they got appointed. And there was something when Says was reading the word wall that Kwaan wrote, there was something about, he said brethren, which is what Marsh has been referring to the other Inquisitors as the whole time. So it started to make me think maybe the Inquisitors first came about to deal with the Hero of Ages, and then when it turned out Rashek took out Alendi, the Inquisitors came under his service because they were all united against Alendi and whatever he was doing. So I suspect that could be the origin of the Inquisitors. I don't know quite the how or the why of it yet, but they had this text from Kwaan, so they must have known more information than most knew about Alendi and Rashek and what happened. So I suspect, some of the Inquisitors are out to get Luthadel and take back the power base of the Empire, and I think we're going to see the rest showing up at the well trying to claim that. And and from what Rashek was saying when he died, and the fact that Vin was brooding on it, I suspect that they know whatever it was Rashek was doing to try and keep the world at bay, so that is their end goal at the moment. They're trying to save the world in the same way Rashek was doing it, so they're heading to the Well of Ascension to try and make a move on that.
Interesting. So
yeah, I feel like we're going to learn a lot more about the Inquisitors this book.
So maybe they could be on our side as far as we don't want the world to end either, but not on our side as far as we didn't like Rashek and how he handled things.
Yeah.
That could be very interesting, yeah. Okay, I like that one. Jaymee, what do you got?
So I was on a very similar train of thought, I think, to Dak. The Inquisitors having Kwaan's text. It must be fairly important to them. Whether Marsh knows the significance yet or just doesn't want to talk about it, who knows? He's a bit weird at the moment, so we'll just let him be in his mood. I was thinking, about the, Kwaan and Rashek would have known each other. They would have had this relationship. If Alendi, wasn't the Hero of Ages and Rashek sort of stepped in, that made me think that they were maybe allies. And what did Rashek do to his biggest supporters? He gave them allomancy. I was thinking that maybe Kwaan was the first Inquisitor, and maybe it was because Rashek was trying to give him powers. So maybe Kwaan, has that significance to the Inquisitors as well. So I think that's kind of a train of thought that I like at the moment. And the Inquisitors, I think they're increasing their numbers, and they've got a job to do. They know, I actually don't think they're going to head towards Luthadel. I think they're going to go to the Well of Ascension, or they've got this backup plan, I think, for doing whatever Rashek said he was doing to protect them. I think they're on a mission. They've got something going on. So yes, that's my thought about them. And I think a couple of episodes ago I was talking about the mist monster ghost thing. I still really like the idea that there's some kind of allomantic spirit or something. I do think that this one is trying to communicate with Vin. I don't necessarily think it was trying to kill her or anything, but I mean, we know that they can physically interact with people as well, and she's got the skills to hear it and see it. I think there's definitely some more significance. I know they've talked about it being, the closest thing they can think of is a mist wraith, but we don't think it's that. I think it would be a bit weird to have another instance of a mist wraith.
Since we already have
evolution.
two.
I don't think it's going to fall into that. Yeah, I'm not quite sure what it is yet, but I think, I like the idea of it being a spirit or something that we've come across before, trying to communicate. So I look forward to seeing where that's going. I've got no clue about the Terrace Woman yet. I think it's a little bit early to tell, but she's definitely got some guts, that's for sure.
One thing that you said that I kind of latched onto because it seemed really interesting to me is the possibility of Kwaan being like this first Inquisitor, and if it was, then we know that the Inquisitors somehow get the power to burn Adium, right? Because we've seen them do it. Which would mean if Kwaan was also a feruchemist, then he could have done the same thing the Lord Ruler did to like live forever, basically, by using Adium to store age and then burning it or whatever. So
I had thought about that maybe one of the Inquisitors is Kwaan. Maybe he's still around.
Okay,
I thought that would be a really, really cool concept as well. Yeah. We might not have seen him. Maybe he's somewhere. Maybe he's still there in the Conventicle. Maybe Marsh did find Kwaan and he's sitting up there and says, "Don't follow me." Kwaan's down there helping, get the last Inquisitors out. Maybe he's still there.
Yeah, we didn't really talk about that possibility. That Sayes didn't. We were in Sayes' perspective, and he didn't see what Marsh did. We only have Marsh's word that there was nothing there.
True.
Yeah, and there's something more going on. I don't really trust Marsh at all at the moment. Not that I necessarily think he's out to hurt Sayes or do something terrible. He's not giving us anything to go off. And he's acting all weird, and yeah, I'm not sure that I trust him. I'm not entirely certain that that's still not something sinister there waiting for them, but I don't think they were alone. I do think there was someone else there.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it would be very easy for something else to have been there. Even if Marsh was telling 100% the truth, there still could have been something there watching them that neither of them knew about. So.
Absolutely.
Creepy place. Which is, when you look at the map, it's like pretty far from anything also. So it's like they traveled a long way out there. It's out there.
Are all Terracemen feruchemists that we know of? Or is it only a select few?
No, definitely. Now, definitely not. But even back in that time, we don't know for a fact that they're all feruchemists. We know that at least several of the packmen on the trip that Alendi took were feruchemists, which gives the impression that if, they're doing like these manual labor jobs, that it's not that uncommon. But I don't think we've ever been told that they're all feruchemists.
Okay.
And it would have been hard to breed it out of the race like the Lord Ruler was trying to do if they were all feruchemists. So that's why I kind of assume that they're not.
Yeah.
Okay, Joe, what predictions you got for us?
Yeah, so you guys had some really cool stuff you talked about. I don't know how... I think I'm just going to stick with the idea that both of you mentioned, that the Inquisitors, if they left the Conventicle, they're probably headed towards the north through Terrace to get to the Well of Ascension. And even if they're not strictly going to the well directly, I almost wonder if the other plan I talked about, like maybe they're trying to make a new Lord Ruler, but they need a feruchemist to do that. So they're headed to Terrace to find feruchemists. I'm wondering if that could be a possibility. So that's kind of where I'm at with the Terracemen. With Vin and the Ghost Wraith Mist thing, I liked some of the directions you guys were talking about, and I'm almost wondering, I've been toying with the idea that maybe somehow it's actually Alendi reaching through the mists, like maybe something happened to him 1,000 years ago that made him a part of the mists themselves and Allomancy, because I get the impression based off some of the writings from the past that Alendi may have been the only one with allomantic powers. And so if something happened to him, just some of the writings, like Kwaan talks about him being the savior, him having these powers, and the power to save the world and all that kind of stuff. It made me think that like there's a reason they've singled this guy out. It's because he can do something beyond what any of the other people, the feruchemists, any of them can do. So my thought was maybe when whatever happened at the Well of Ascension happened all those years ago, somehow his destruction or something happening to him caused allomancy to spread across, or Rashek was able to grab the power that Alendi had and give it to certain people. But that Alendi became part of the mists, and until Rashek was defeated, he couldn't like make himself corporeal in any way, and he's still struggling to do that. And he's reaching out to Vin specifically because he knows that she killed Rashek. So that's kind of what I'm toying with right now. I don't know how much facts there are to back that up within the book, but that's just something that I thought would be a really cool idea. Kind of get like a Force Ghost perspective, or going along with Force Ghost perspective, maybe it's Kelsier reaching back through the mists. Like when he dies, he becomes part of the mists, like all Mistborn or people with allomantic powers that are Mistborn become part of the mists or something, and then they can, if they're strong enough, they can reach back through. I don't know, just something. I've been toying with the idea of being able to come back in some way through the mists, because obviously there's a lot more to the mists that we're finding out in this book than we first thought. So they are obviously certainly granting Vin extra powers at the end of the first book than we thought possible. And I almost wonder if she's being like boosted by specific entities within the mist, like Kelsier or Alendi or whoever. So that's just something I've been toying with. So that's a pretty large overall prediction for where the story's heading. So I may be way off, but I just thought that was a cool idea. And then as far as the parlay, if the first book is any indication, my guess is that this stuff with Elend and the two warlords is going to go horribly, horribly wrong. Because I feel like if we're going to see similar tropes as we did in the first book, it's like they have this plan kind of ironed out, and it's not going to work the way they want it to at all. So I'm guessing that the two warlords are going to figure out what Elend is doing, and it's not going to be pretty for our friends. They're gonna go through some rough stuff. And if my earlier prediction about Orser actually being a different Khandra that may be controlled by one of the warlords is true, then it's possible that he'll end up being like the informant that kind of gives them up or something. So we'll see.
Yeah, that would probably be a bad place. Although, on the plus side, Vin missed possibly almost all that meeting. So if her dog was a bad dog, then he wouldn't have heard the plan.
Yeah, I guess that's true. But I'm sure Ellen's going to tell her what's going on, or she's going to figure it out. So
that's true. Yeah. No reason for him to keep that a secret from Vin. These are the things that she will need to know to help protect him, I'm sure. Interesting. I like the idea that there's these things like people like Mistborn turning into the mist somehow and like being able to reach back and help in some way. Yeah.
Well, and we've never completely unraveled the mystery of why they're called Mistborn. So if we're to take that in the more literal sense of the phrase, it's like from the mists they are born, to the mists they return. I don't know.
That's true. We had theories about why they're called Mistborn, and people saying that like Allomancers first appeared with the mists or whatever, but we don't really know. And that, honestly, that's the kind of thing that we may never know, because for all we know, that could have been before even Alendi's time when this word came about. So
yeah, that's true. I mean, we don't know for a fact that Alendi was the only Mistborn. That's just kind of what I'm surmising based on the information that I've read so far.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. I like some of these predictions. I dislike some of these. No, I'm just. But moving on to emails, we have 3 emails this week. Retro Rocket emailed again. Some of his stuff we've already covered, and some of it is just like calling us out on random things, like like us calling him out for saying he was watching the podcast when it's a listening thing, and he has to defend himself on that one. But I'm just going to touch on a couple of things that he sent. One of them is, he says, it's kind of a general observation. Now that you aren't numbering the episodes with the Well of Ascension, it's kind of hard to refer to a specific episode. And that's true. I did stop for all of the Final Empire when it's posted on the website. They're episode 1, episode 2, episode 3, all the way up to episode 18, which was the last one of the Final Empire. I realized that as we progressed, like episode 1 of Well of Ascension would have been episode 19 or 20 overall. And I was like, I don't know. I feel like it might be confusing to say episode 20 and then be like chapters 1, 2, and 3, and 4 of the Well of Ascension. It seemed like counterintuitive. And also then the numbers would no longer match the symbols I was using. So I was like, okay, now that doesn't fit. I could just start over and call like Mistborn Will of Ascension episode 1, but then there's 2 episode 1s, and as we progress and do other things, that might be confusing also. So I decided, okay, I think the simplest way is to get rid of the episode numbering thing entirely and just be like number with the chapters by saying Well of Ascension chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4, and that's how you find an episode is what chapters you're wanting to look at. And I don't know if that's the best way to do it, but that was the best way that I came up with to make it not confusing for people. And I realized based on his comment that it's still on some level, if someone wants to refer to an episode, he's like, I wanted to say something about what happened in episode 2 of The Well of Ascension, but I didn't know really what to call it. So I get it, and if someone has a suggestion, I'm willing to listen to a better way to organize them on there or to label them, but that's just what I came up with. He also says that it makes him sad that since we're maximizing Cosmere awareness, it probably means that Stormlight, his favorite series, is going to be pretty far off. And I will say, in the general reading order that I have at the moment, that is one of the very last Cosmere things that we touch on. There's like one thing after the Stormlight books. So yes, that's pretty far off.
Dang.
So that's his email. Of course, we talked about how if long term, the plan was for Cosmere first and then non-Cosmere stuff. So there's still a lot of stuff after that. It's just not Cosmere related stuff. Okay. But that's those are the things in Retro Rocket's email that I want to touch on. The next one comes from Nicholas. And he says, hey, I'm Nick from Utah. Though that shouldn't be surprising because if I remember correctly, that's a large part of your demographic. Interestingly, actually, talking about our demographic randomly, I'm sure everyone is super interested to hear all about that.
Let's hear about the statistics, Data. I'd like to know.
For the month of September, let's see, Virginia is actually where most of the listeners have come from. And then Ohio, Colorado, North Carolina, and Texas. So Utah's pretty far down on the list for September, at least.
Yeah, Virginia, that's fascinating.
Yeah, lots of people in Virginia. And then in Canada, Ontario is by far the most popular. And in Australia, it's New South Wales.
That makes sense.
Do we know anybody? Do we have friends in Ontario?
That's
Canada?
where. No, wait. Is Ontario is where or is Quebec where Toronto is? I don't remember.
No, Toronto's Ontario, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
We know a couple
so we got
of
friends. Yeah, we
area.
got friends in Toronto.
There's 3 downloads from Australian Capital Territory in September, and I was like, that may be just Dak and Jaymee re-listening to episodes.
I'm pretty sure that's us.
That's probably us.
So, random statistics for the month of September so far. But anyway, he says, I just got to say I love the podcast, but I do have to mention I don't understand all the hate against Spook. He's one of my favorite characters of the series, and he was even before he started talking normal. He goes on to
you're entitled to your opinion.
Honestly, I feel like that in order to be fun and amusing, we've taken a mild dislike of Spook and turned it into like an outright hatred because it's more fun for the show that way. I don't think anyone necessarily hates Spook that much.
I'm conflating it, but I don't like him. But I am conflating it a bit. But I mean, like I said in a previous episode, dying gurgling on his own blood without ever feeling the touch of a woman, I think that's a fitting end for him. No, he's fine. He's fine. It's just, I think what it is if I knew a guy like Spook in real life, I would be extremely irritated by him. So that's why he's irritating to me in the book.
Yeah, I buy that. If you knew a guy who was constantly talking in a way that you couldn't, and no one around you, as far as you know, could really understand, it would probably be annoying in real life. Which is kind of where Breeze is coming from, where he's just like, are you still an unintelligible nuisance or whatever he says?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, his character is really not that bad. I think being a Tin Eye is kind of cool. Like, if I had to pick one of the Allomantic powers, I think that's probably high up on my list because I think it's actually pretty cool. It's just, it's in a package that I'm not particularly fond of.
Nick explains a little bit of the background of the way that he talks as kind of excuse and explain why he does that. I'm not going to actually read that, Nick, because that is something that comes out in these books a little bit later. So it'd be kind of spoilery to go into right now. But there are reasons and explanations. One more interesting thing to note, he says, is that Scadrial, the planet, has no moon. I'm pretty sure the mists are white like the average fog, but with zero moonlight, the nights on Scadrial would be really dark, and the mists just as so, which would also probably make tin even more useful than it already is. Anyway, that's all the interesting stuff I have to bring up. Again, I really love the show, and who knows, maybe someday in the future you might even catch up to the currently released books. Yeah, that's a long way off, but, who knows what might happen.
We got time.
But it's true that Scadrial has no moon. I didn't mention that before, but I don't think it ever actually comes up in the books. Especially if they have no moon, they wouldn't know what to reference to say they did not have one, because they would never have known what that is. But if you know more about the Cosmere as a whole, then that is a note that Scadrial does not have a moon. Whereas some of the worlds in other books have several moons. So, one last email from Sam. And Sam says, I always wondered why Vin didn't use a bit of aluminum when testing new metals. Like, this one's making me sick. Take a bit of aluminum and it burns your reserve so that there's no metal left to make you sick. Or you think aluminum only burns away all the good metals?
I just kind of assumed it burns away all the allomantic ones. And if it's like a non-burnable one, then it probably would just stay there.
Yeah, that's true.
I think we touched on that a little bit when we first found out about it, because you're like, you don't want to burn like all of the iron out of your body because your blood kind of needs that or whatever. So, yeah, I guess I always assume the same thing.
I don't know. Maybe it's a stomach thing and not a blood thing, though. Because I mean, they're eating these metals, so I think we're to understand that it's sitting in their stomach. And possibly their colons, not necessarily like straight into their bloodstream, although that would feed into their bloodstream. So how the science of that works out, I don't know.
That's actually a deeper hole than we'll ever get into in the books. But so you're saying there's potential for me to make up whatever bullshit I want about it, and I'd be right. Well, I'll just say that magic in the Cosmere works. A lot of times things work because that's how you think or expect them to work, and not because that's actually the only way they can work. So it's not like a Dresden hard science. It's more like a user-friendly magic. It is, but it isn't, because it's like there's what's possible and there's what works because you think that's the only way it will work. So, and I think that actually does apply to Dresden also, because what you believe is very much tied into what you can accomplish in with Dresden Files magic. That's true. If you think that this spell will only work if you do it this way, then that's the only way it will work for you, because that's how you think about it. That's why each of the wizards have their own instruments and tools, because it's that's the way it makes sense to me, so that's the way it works. But yeah, I think I've always assumed it was just allomantic metals, which, while she can burn these other metals, they're not true allomantic. And I guess they're really what we're talking about with those is we're talking about the alloys, which are part actual allomantic metal and then part not, which is why they don't kill you, like just straight up burning a metal that's no good. Right. Yeah, so maybe that would be extremely dangerous, because if it somehow got rid of I know it's an alloy, but if it somehow got rid of the allomantic part of the metal and then you were just burning that other metal, you would die, I would assume. Yeah, unless the other part of the metal is actually a different element. Because I know pewter is part copper or something we talked about, or was it copper or tin? It's one of, so if you burned off one of them and the other one was left, you might just have an actual allomantic metal. I don't know. Alloys are weird because they're not really any longer two different metals. They're a new metal that you've created by mixing. Right, molecular. Yeah. Molecular compounds change. I don't know if that could ever actually work, if you could burn away part of it. But anyway, that's an interesting question, Sam. I've always assumed that it worked one way, but who really knows, I guess. And I don't know if burning the whole metal makes her any sicker than burning just part of it, because she only tries a little bit at a time. And she said it makes her sick for 2 days just trying that little bit. So, I don't know. It might be that however much of it she burned, she would still be down for 2 days. Okay, those were our emails. If anyone else would like to email us, we're happy to hear feedback and criticisms and praise and any kind of thing you want to send. We had hate mail one time, I remember. So, you can send that to the Sanderlanche with an E at the end at gmail.com. you don't type out the Sanderlanche with an E at the end. There's just an E at the end of the word, like the word avalanche. Just want to clarify that. No one was dumb enough to think that, but it occurred to me as I was saying it. You can also tweet at us at the Sanderlanche, or find us on Facebook or on Instagram. I mentioned some Instagram comment earlier in this episode about Joe and his love of thick books. So find us there.
Sure.
Say things. Music by Miracle of Sound. Throw that out there while I'm thinking about it. And for next week, I mentioned that this was the only 2-chapter thing for a while. For next week, we are doing 3 chapters. That will be 14, 15, and 16. So if anyone's following along, 14, 15, 16, read them, come back. We'll talk about them next time. And I think that's everything we need to touch on. I've been meaning to try to come up with some sort of like
a sign off.
Something to use every time, so
Yeah.
that my sign off isn't extremely awkward like it always is. Like,
Right.
I think that's everything. Bye.
I've been watching too much Rick and Morty, so the only thing in my head is wubba lubba dub dub.
Yeah, no.
But I don't. No, yeah, that's not a good one.
Honestly, for our show, we probably need like a Bender quote or something.
Yeah,
Totally
or
cool.
let's just go straight up. Let's lean into what we hate. It's like wuzzing with the goodbye, everybody.
Oh, I love that actually.
Gooding with the bye.
Yeah.
You gotta put wuzzing in there. Wuzzing is what sells it as like,
Right.
Oh, he didn't just say something weird. This is a spook talk.
Right.
Wuzzing to the next time.
Wuzzing.
Oh, yeah. Wuzzing to the time of next.
Yeah, wuzzing.
Yes.
Yes. Wuzzing to the time of next, everybody.
After we leave like the Mistborn books, that might not make any sense anymore, but I'm totally I think that might be the way to go.
Yeah.
I like it.
Okay. Wuzzing to the time of next, everybody. And then
So
cut to the
asinine.
music.
And we try to keep a little beauty in the world. All that died, we keep it in our hands. Oh, we are the maiden voice. We are the endless tale. Oh, keep it in our hands. We tell it to the page. Ooh, we never let it fade.